Hey guys, Wolfie here. This is the finale of RWBY Volume 8, Chapter 10. This is Part 4, and it's all on this guy down below, Ironwood. Now, any opinion in this video and the parts 1 through 3 are my opinion and my opinion only. AKA the usual disclaimer. Now, with General James Ironwood, with this particular chapter, this is very much confirming his fall from grace. Now, if you look at his character, when did he start showing signs that he was going to be the way he was in Volume 8, Chapter 10? Because when it comes to characters, I do feel that this one was actually well done in the sense of that very gradual feel. Despite the fact that he was only mentioned once at the beginning of Volume 6, he wasn't really mentioned much in Volume 5 as on top of that. But the thing here is that, Ironwood, we know, is becoming an antagonist. But it's been a long time coming. Now, if you look at the varying scenes, he was like telling Penny, who she should be hanging around with, who she shouldn't be hanging around with. It's like, I know it's either Volume 1 or Volume 2. But it's just like you have a bit of a dictatorship-like thing with Penny. And that was, I know it was very early on, and that was perhaps one of the first signs to the behavior from Volume 8, Chapter 10. The very first sign is how he was with Penny. And then, with RWBY, being all, I don't care who you are, as long as you're a good person, that's all that matters. Now, that is sign number 1, very subtle, but it's something that can be easily missed if you don't pay careful attention. Now, with Volume 3, his tactics for how to tackle Salem differed than Ozpin when he was alive, as well as Glinda. And the way Winter was, it's like, at first she was siding with she was siding with Ironwood as well. But that's the whole military thing, for the reason. But the thing is, it's like, Ironwood had a different approach as opposed to Ozpin when he was alive and Glinda. And that bit is just like, okay, we see a different approach, and sometimes one approach might not work out so well in the end as well as the other. Now, with that whole approach for Volume 3. Now, Volume 4. Now, we see a little bit more of Ironwood. He came to Weiss's defense, all that stuff. And then, before I get to that part, Volume 3, Winter wanted Weiss to go into the Elysian military, to make a name for, thing. Actually, no, it wasn't Volume 3. It was Volume 7. My bad. Now, Volume 3, just like you see a different side of Winter, like you see the signs of Winter, being different from Ironwood, that sort of thing, Winter and Weiss having a very sisterly relationship, that sort of thing. Now, with Volume 4, Ironwood becoming on Weiss's side, but this is the volume where we really start to see the signs. Now, sign number 1 is that the whole thing, the arguments he has had with Jacques Schneid. There are 2 of them. Now, the second of the 2 was the whole lockdown on Alice. It's like, he's not making sound decisions. Like, he's jumping the gun before getting to the truth. Now, granted, the whole thing with Team RWBY, they're not completely innocent because they withheld certain information from him in Volume 7. Now, with that, so the whole thing with the lockdown, that is all 100% Ironwood. And it's like, he knew that Winter was in a different area. Now, some of the assumptions that Ironwood has made. One of them was in Volume 4, where it's like, he still thought that Weiss was the heiress. Now, we know that in Volume 4, Weiss is no longer the heiress. She can do whatever she wants if she felt like it. And the fact that Ironwood still assumed that Weiss is still the heiress when in Volume 4 that she wants it is one of the biggest mistakes Ironwood made in Volume 8 because, again, the whole thing with the planes, we all know that Whitley pulled the trigger, not Weiss. So that's the thing with the assumption aspect. Now, another thing here with Volume 4 is like, yeah. I think he was kind of like making an offer for Weiss to be the Elysian military. Now, we do know that in Volume 7, Weiss doesn't want to do that. Weiss does not want to go into the military at all. That's not her forte. Now, for Volume 6, we do know that Ironwood was in fact contacted about the whole relic thing with Leonhardt and Haven Academy. We do know that it is a 100% confirmed fate for Leonhardt, that sort of thing. Now, for the end of Volume 6, it's just like this is Ironwood's decision that Team RWBY and company were considered the bad guys hostile. When the beginning of Volume 7, they realized, oh shit, we made a mistake. They were trying to get the relic to us, and we thought them as a bad guy. Where between Volumes 5 and 7, and then this is how we all know this is 100% off screen, that Cinder, Watts, Neo, and Tyrion all made it to Atlas without a problem. Yet, RWBY and company were given problem. Now, this is another example of Ironwood not being in the correct judgment. And this is one of those things where this is going to cost Ironwood. Now, in Volume 8, it's just like he's making more assumptions, making more irrational decisions. Now, with the end of Chapter 10, this is setting the stage for his death. Now, if he's taking other people with him, and this is including the councilman he shot without being provoked, this is going to be making him look even worse. Now, some people say, it's argued for him to, not have good development, but I very disagree here. Because if you look at the earliest volumes for RWBY, some of the most subtle hints have been right there. How he treated Penny, who was one of his own. How he viewed the whole meeting, with Ozpin and Glinda. The assumption of his that Weiss is still the heiress, which she's not. Some of the other decision making between Volume 5 and Volume 7 regarding the whole military thing, where you got 4 people that were able to make it into Atlas without a problem. Cinder, Neo, Watts, and Tyrion. Those 4 made it in, but RWBY company had a very hard time. And the worst mistake Ironwood made was Whitley. Because there is another Schnee sibling, and it was Whitley who pulled the trigger on those additional planes to save people. Now, we do know we're going to be seeing a civil war between Atlas and Mansell, and people could be forced to pick sides. So it's one of those things, in all honesty, it's like, this becomes a really interesting situation for Ironwood. Is that he's going to be a dead man. But the question is, who's going to kill him, and how are they going to kill him? And we know the track record Ironwood has had since the start. Super subtle at first, but not so sane Ironwood at the end. And in reality, it's kind of sad for Ironwood, to come out like this in the end of here. But it's one of those things, it's like, if you blink, you'll miss it, but there has been subtle hints from the very beginning. Now, regardless of how people think of that, like I said, this is pretty well done in my personal opinion, because I write fan fiction, and some people who write fan fiction tend to have a keen eye on the aspect of how you execute a character in the sense of their development. Now, with the development of Ironwood, he's probably one of the better developed characters this show has had. Now, you're talking about, it's like super subtle, then it gradually gets more obvious. Then it becomes so obvious, it's like, oh, damn. That sort of thing. Now, I'm going to keep this one on a little bit on the short side because I kind of do have to start getting ready for work. But overall, to conclude, for the Ironwood aspect of this particular thing, is that we've seen this coming since close to the beginning. It's like this. We've seen super subtle hints, not so subtle hints, and then becoming more obvious hints. It's a bit more of a gradual scale than more of like sudden. And I have to give the credit where it's due. Ironwood was perhaps one of their better written characters, and I like to see more of that gradual scale. Now, for the chapter 10 as a whole, I guess, like I said, Ironwood is probably one of the better written characters. However, I cannot say the same as some of the others. Now, I want to say sometime in April there is going to be a RWBY Volume 8 Revisited, and I'm going to do a Volume 9's prediction video Part 1, and I'm going to base it on the end of Volume 8, so that's that on that, and I'm done with this video at last. With Wolvie here, signing off. I will catch you all on the flip side.